Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. I'm sorry, it's Tuesday. It is November 3rd. In fact, it's election day here in the U.S. So if you're a U.S. resident, I hope you've gone out and voted. Exercise your right to vote. This is a very important election, probably one of the biggest ones in my life that I can remember, maybe outside of the Obama election. So make sure you go vote. Anyway, let's. I don't like to talk about politics really on our site, so we'll move on. But if you hadn't voted, I would encourage you to go vote. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. Let's look at the big picture here first. Actually, by the way, before we get started, I did have my follow-up appointment today. Doctor says everything looks good. I'm seeing 20/20 out of my left eye. And my right eye, which is the one that I had the detached retina in, that I really had all the problems with, that started all of this, I'm seeing 20/25 out of it. And really, when you combine both eyes, I'm seeing 20/20. So he said my left eye will probably even get better. So he said I could probably improve to 20/15 in that left eye. So everything looks perfect. He said everything went well. I'm seeing real well. And I've only got one more follow-up in a month, and if everything looks good, then they'll release me, and I'm pretty much done with all my eye surgeries. I'm really almost feeling back to normal now. I still have just a little bit of haziness in that left eye, and just comparing it to the right eye, it took it about a month before it really cleared up. All of the haziness cleared up. And of course, I'm still putting antibiotics and other stuff in that left eye, and I have to do that for another 2 or 3 weeks too. So basically, I have to continue till I use all the medicine in a little bottle. And if I remember right, on the right eye, it took about another 2 or 3 weeks before I used all that up. So, and I think until I really stop taking those, putting those drops in there, I'm probably still gonna have a little bit of haziness. That's what the doctor said anyway. So. But he said to expect it to clear up and even get better. So anyway, thanks for all the well wishes, the prayers, and so forth. Because as a trader, especially a price action chart reader, your vision is everything. So if I were to lose my vision, even in one eye, it could be detrimental. But if you have problems in both eyes, it really it could be the end of my trading, basically. So if you can't see a chart, you can't read it. So anyway, that's where we stand on that. And let's talk about the trades. I'm going to back out a little bit here and make this a little easier to see. This is a really strong trend. So far, the volatility is not, we got a little crazy here in the afternoon, but still is trending fairly well. So, I mean, this is not a real difficult day, really. I encourage you to it helps to know where the bigger channel is right here, so you kind of get an idea where you're going to reverse on each side. But you really need to narrow into these tighter ranges, because that's really going to be where most of your trades are going to set up. So just keep that in mind. And actually, I do want to just back out and show you this channel here. And I mean, this is what we were looking at when I came in. 7 o'clock was right here. So we were fairly, basically we're looking for a measured leg up right there. Where's my arrow? There it is. So if you start here and you go to here, from that point on, you'd be looking for a measured move. And you can see we got that to the tick before we started correcting here. And then move. So we really got two perfect measured legs up. A move to a break of this, a move to a new high, and then we just traded sideways. And here you had to assume we were probably coming back to this trend line. But we end up breaking that and trading lower, and you get a break of the big yellow trend line. It really did get confirmed in here, but once we reached this other side with two measured legs, that was pretty much it. And it looked like we were just going to go sideways, and I thought maybe we'd go higher again, but we ended up trading down a little bit and then sideways. and we actually traded back. This is when it started to get a little volatile in here. Of course, this is all after 2 o'clock. So really we had a trend up and a trend down into 2 o'clock, and that was basically what we were looking at. So also I wanted to show you on this, originally this morning I looked at this two ways. I was looking at this. You can see this looks like a midline here, and that still could be correct. But I ended up, since we never got up that high, I ended up tightening this down actually to where we met it up here. And you can see we actually kind of met it right there as well. And it still fits in there on the midline. So I don't know which one is correct. Either one of them probably. They both get you the same place because the trend line is what we know we're working off of. It's really setting the pattern here. And so it doesn't really matter where this one was up here, other than it might help you to know where prices were going to turn. And you really wouldn't have known to bring it down tighter until it turned early here. And so whether or not you played it like I did, trying to guess where the highs were, and like I said, this still could be right because you can see prices playing off that midline all the way up through there. And so maybe this is right in the end anyway, and we just, once we met that measured move, we just couldn't get any more out of this move. Because, I mean, that's a fairly large move, really, from 33.05 or so all the way to 33.80. That's a 75-point move and 2 legs up. So that's a nice move. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see us go sideways or correct a little bit. So it didn't really matter how you saw it, I guess, is basically what I'm getting at. But let's back out again here. And we trended up one leg, and when I came in 7 o'clock, actually I didn't trade today, but normally when I'd come in it'd be at 7 o'clock, so that's where I always start. But the 7 o'clock comes right as we're making this curve down, so you've got a clear channel working down, and then you get a first entry, second entry right at the trend line. We do get a little close outside here. I like going short right there. Quick, easy move. You make a lower high here, but that's too congested, and then you make a failed second entry long with another nice bar. I like going short there. It moves down, comes back, and makes one more attempt before it drops down. And this is when I would have drawn that trend line right across here. And I really drew it off these this first swing here, and it does catch this one. Really, it needs to be just a hair lower, but that's close enough. And then we make a higher low here and bounce off of it again. But notice you got a low, you try to go short once, you try to go short twice. If it breaks higher here, that's a failed second entry short. And it does confirm this trend line here. So I like going long right there. It looks like a reversal after we've had a close outside and more than a couple of legs down. And off it goes. And if you catch this one move, I mean, that's a nice move. And you probably can ride this all the way up. I wouldn't want to exit this until you broke one of these lower swings. And make sure you see this. We hadn't had a lot of these lately, but I've talked about a few of them. When you start to see all these little bars going up and your corrections are no more than a bar or two swing, and you see lots of stems and doji looking bars in there, but it just keeps going higher with very shallow corrections, that is a very strong trend. So just keep that in mind. And so really we traded from around 33, 35 or so here, straight up to 33.65 before we even had a minor correction. And that's still a really shallow correction. So this is a strong move. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And this is actually a second entry long. It's too flat here, and you really just don't get a chance to enter this. Wait for it to come back to this secondary trend line, the darker yellow one working up here. And you come back and you try to go high once. And you really don't make a lower low there, but it does make a lower high by a tick or so. So that's a correction still. So that's still a second entry long. And in a strong trend like this, that's probably all you're going to get. I'd take it, especially with a nice small bar like that. and that bar is only 8 ticks, so that's relatively small for a strong day like this. So, and off it goes again. And again, you should be trying for runners on these to the upside. And again, you would have had a nice runner there that runs for, another 20 plus points here. And you only have to catch one or two of those to really make a difference in your trading. But anyway, we run up here. We actually do get a little close outside here. We run up, and you actually make a failed second entry long. Normally, if it's on this side of the EMA, I'd tell you to ignore it. But we've had a break. We didn't quite get up to here where I thought we were going. We've already had a measured move, and we're probably going to trap longs here. So if this breaks lower, you're going to at least go back to the EMA, and you may run all the way back to the midline and then all the way back to the trend line. And so I like entering that. It's a little aggressive, but you can see we haven't made it back to that EMA, and it's been since it was 9 o'clock, a little after 9 o'clock, and here it is, 30 minutes later, 40 minutes later, 20 or 30 minutes later before we actually get a chance to come back. The main thing is that's probably going to trap some longs that just are looking at second entries right there. And so I like that one, just to ride it back to the EMA is all you're really looking for. But it turns out you might get a little more out of that. They probably would have got your runner here if you're playing break even or break even plus one. If you were giving it a little more room on this, I'd probably just scalp out. I don't even know if I'd hold a runner because the bias is really still up. So, and normally I wouldn't even recommend taking a short here, but because of what I just described, the two legs up, the break of this, the fact that we couldn't get up here, the fact that we hadn't been back to the EMA in 20 or 30 minutes, that's worth taking. And of course we run on down here, and we actually get an overshoot, which oftentimes leads to a break, and sometimes it'll lead to a reversal. And there is a second entry short right here, but this looks just so congestive. I didn't draw that part of it, but it looks really, really congestive here. And you can see that right there. And so you want to be real careful about trading right into that double bottom right there, especially in an uptrend day. So I don't think I'd go short there. You could look at that as a failed second entry short and go long, but everything's just flat. There's resistance there. The EMA's there. So you need something better than that. But we finally run up here, and there's actually a failed second entry short right here because that's a double bottom, so first entry, second entry. But you don't want to enter way up here on a breakout like this because we need to come back and test this most likely, and that's what happens here. And that confirms this trend line, and really you can still look at this as almost a double bottom, so first entry, second entry, and there's a hidden second entry there too. But the main thing is it confirms this trend line. It's a strong trend. It's a breakout pullback. There's a couple of different reasons to like that one. You see it took it a minute to take on off, but once people realized we're going higher, and some people may not have seen this trend line right here, but for whatever reason it takes it a minute, but it takes on off. And I'm guessing that all these people that were trying to pick tops had to exit when it turned up here. So they're all the shorts are exiting, and people are piling in the longs, and then suddenly it starts going the other way again, and the longs go, oh, I'm too early, and they all have to exit real fast, and that's why it rockets down like that real quick. And you might have got some profit taken in here of people that are just trading traps and things. And of course there's two legs back, and I want to talk about this because somebody asked me this in the forum, but I also got an email. I'm not sure if it was the same person or not, but you can see how congestive that is. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 bars stacked up there, at least kind of going sideways, and 2 of them don't really have any body. That's congestion. And notice this, the main thing you really need to see is we got a little channel working up here, but that's a big overshoot, and that's only one leg down. So this does not look anything like another leg down if it goes higher right there. So it's just not a good place to go long. You're better off just to kind of wait. And then when you get that second leg down, this actually breaks lower and turns high. You might consider going long right there if you really wanted to go long, but I'd still want to see more proof that we're going higher, because you can see it still looks congestive. We're just kind of going, look how flat that EMA is. You got to be real careful here. But finally we make a first entry short, a second entry short, and if it fails there, you've probably got enough room to go long right there. Even this one's a little bit questionable because there's still some resistance there. I originally had that one blue, but after looking at it and just a little closer there, I still think that ought to be green. Because even though there's a failure there, that's the only reason I had that one blue, because it is a trap. And it's probably going to at least be good for a scalp there on a failed second entry short. The problem is at this point, I ended up adjusting this later because it was obvious. But at this point, really, that looks more like your highs, and you can see you're going long right into it. So that's a problem there. Of course, I adjusted it to here later when it was more evident that that's probably where it was. And this is probably a little higher here as well. And this is probably a breakout and another failed breakout. So if you bring it down like that, it does fit better. So I think that's a little better, but that also leads you to like that to the long side, as long as you got room to get out before you move an equal distance. So there's just a couple of different ways to look at that. I'm going to leave it green because it's a little bit aggressive, and you can see we ended up coming right back down to the bottom again. I still like this one because it's a new high there, first entry, second entry. So it's a second entry down here at the lows again. Nice bullish bar, plenty of room to get out. So you may take that one. This would look more like a breakout pullback, but again, it's congestive. You're going long right at the highs, and now it's pretty obvious that there's some kind of range or sideways action going on here. And so this just turns out to be a failed breakout to the high side, but the bias is up, so I'd want at least a lower high. You get that here. Bar's too bullish. There's a failed second entry long here. It looks like a reversal pattern, but you got to go short right into that, plus the trend line on the channels right here. So again, I don't think it's a very good short. It probably will trap some longs trying to trade this off the low. And you can see it went one or two ticks higher instantly, and you can see right there that it was a trap. That big, huge move down tells you this was a trap, and that a lot of people got long across here and had to exit. And you make another lower high here, but not a good signal bar. And finally, you're going to correct some here, and you get a little channel that just corrects. I don't see anything that I like in that channel. You don't want to go long. If you're going to go long, it's down here, but you still got this channel in play. There's been no real overshoot of it. Well, it may have looked like it overshot it a little bit right there, but it's probably more like that right there. And so I don't think you want to go long in here. And by the time you get this short, there is a second entry short, but look how congestive, and you see what happens. You would have got trapped right there. So, and again, this is not a very good reversal type pattern or anything, so I don't think you want to go long. And it's not long before you're going short again. You make a lower high here, not a very good setup once again. So you just have to, it's kind of hard right here because really from 10:30 and, you know, it's almost 12 here. So that's an hour and a half. You almost just have to do nothing. And that's hard to do. And that's where most traders mess up because they feel like they should have found a trade in there and there's just not one. So learn to sit tight and notice quickly you get a first entry and a second entry short right there. Nice bearish bar. I like that one. And really, there's a little short-term trend channel working down through here. You can see that. And that's your first close outside. It's a double top and a second entry short. And so you're probably going to try to make a new low here, and that's what happens. And we really just kind of start working sideways again. And again, you don't really get a good setup, but just be patient. And then suddenly you get a first entry and a second entry that fails right at the key entry point. So if prices break lower again here, it's probably going to trap some longs, and you can see right there how it rockets down. Then it makes a lower high. It actually breaks higher and turns down. I like going short one tick below that bar, and that pretty much confirms that trend line when it touches right here, and this is just further confirmation. And off it goes here, and of course that lower high, and we bounce right down here. And just in case you want to make sure there's not a flatter trend, which is the kind of brownish or tannish, and it does turn out there's another channel here. Of course, we bounce down here. It's tempting to try to go long here, and it's one of those that you know, if you really like to be aggressive, you might pick up a great move right there. I'll mark it, but I say you want to wait on a higher low. And the reason I would make this one green is because you made your low here, and you just kind of trap people with that couple extra ticks, and just going, that congestion is happening this far away from the EMA means that the momentum on this down move is changing, and we're kind of at equilibrium before it probably bounces back or snaps back to the EMA. And that's, so if you understand what's going on there, that would be more of a reason that you could safely trade this back to the EMA. But that would be the only reason. So if you didn't see that or understand that, then you shouldn't be taking a long right there. So it comes back, and it just kind of gets stuck at the EMA. There's no real short there, and there's no real long there either. It's just too congestive. I didn't draw the little congestion, so you definitely don't want to go short there, because you're probably working back to at least the EMA, and you can see that little range. We run up, and we actually break the trend channel, so we'll probably try to go lower. There is a lower high here, and if you have enough room back to this EMA, you may take that one. I just think you're better off to wait on something better than that, because there's a good chance this gold channel's in play, because if you draw it off these two and pull it down to the low, you can see that midline right across there working prices, and so it's very good chance this is valid. And so when it runs up here, I'd be waiting on it to come back to here to see what happens. And of course, you get a little two-legged correction right there. Look at those two legs. You don't get a good setup for a second entry long, but that's a two-legged correction. And so look for a possible measured move, because that's often the center of your pattern. And look at there, almost to the tick. And it confirms this trend line. You get a failed break out of the congestion. You're a long way away from the EMA. You got a measured move up. I like that one. I'm going to make it green because you're better off to wait on the lower high. But sometimes being conservative, you miss good trades too. And you see that right here. Your lower high is right into this, and you don't get a signal bar either. I think those have matching highs. 63 3/4, 64. So no, that's the higher high. So they're not matching. Let me just double check that. Yep, this one's actually one tick higher, one tick. So you can't really go short there. I wouldn't want to go short right into those lows anyway. You're running down, and of course you get a first entry, and you come back and you get a second entry. I didn't mark this trade. And I'll show you why. There's a little bit of a trend line working up right here, and you can see that. But we're working down in this bigger channel. We just came off the high, and you would expect that maybe we might get some kind of bounce here. But notice the first entry, second entry, and that's a fairly bearish bar, but we're on the other side of the EMA. It is a little bit of a failed breakout. There's a little bit of a sideways action there too. And so for that reason, it's another one that you could argue that it might be green. Oh, I know I didn't mark that one. It's because it's after 2 o'clock. But Um, what time is 2:24? I mean, with it being that late and being only a green one, I wouldn't take it anyway. So I was going to say maybe you'd take that trade, but that late, 224, I'd probably skip that trade because you are looking for prices to go lower. It's the first break of this channel. The the kind of tannish channel is still in play, and you would expect prices to come down to here. And you can see it would have been a nice little move, but I just don't like how congestive it is. Although you could argue for a failed breakout too. So if you just drew this across here, let's just draw it for purposes of making it easier to see. And you can see that little trading range. Doesn't look like I've got it quite squared up there. No, not hardly. And there it is. I guess it doesn't really look square there, but it is. And I guess that's because this is angling through there and it kind of throws you off. And it may just be my eyes too. But anyway, you can see there's a little bit of a range there. It does give you plenty of room back, but generally you want to wait on that lower high. But the main thing is it's well after 2, so it's really a moot point. I wouldn't take that trade that late. So it's almost 30 minutes worth. This was an interesting day, good trading day. You can see what was there. We had a trend up, and then we started off real steep. You got this spike in channel, and then it went into also a spike in channel that's a little flatter and a little wider, which is this two-tiered one. And notice too that you got those two legs right there that I've already showed you, but I would measure this one too. Oops. Make sure I get the right one. And then look for a measured move here. And you can see that we went a little bit higher, but you almost got another perfect measured move. So anyway, that's what I saw today. I'm not going to beat around the bush. We'll be back again tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow will be a normal day. It could be crazy tomorrow. They are going to raise the margins are a little higher starting after 5 o'clock today. So I think they're going to full margins through the overnight tonight, and I guess probably into tomorrow. So we'll see what comes tomorrow. But so far, this has been relatively orderly, and there's not much going on here. Of course, there's no election results out yet, so it's probably going to be later tonight when those results start to show up. We kind of get an idea of where the election's headed and what's going on, and if there's any if anybody contests it or if we have to wait on mail-in ballots, there's a lot of rumors floating around about things that this election the results may not be known till January for a month or two. I just find that hard to believe, but nothing would surprise me lately with all the things that are going on. So you just never know. So be prepared. I wouldn't be trading tonight in the overnight. I really, I would stay out of it. I really would. And I'd be careful in the morning. Don't trade without safety stops. Of course, that goes without saying. You should never trade without safety stops. But I hear crazy stories all the time. People just don't understand exactly what they're doing sometimes when they're trading futures, because it's not like a stock that you can just hold on to it forever. At some point, you have to exit, or your losses could keep going and going and going. And at some point, they'll kick you out, but it could be if something crazy happened and it moved too fast, they may not kick you out until you'd already gone. You owe them more money than was actually in your margin account. That could happen to you, and it's happened to people. So just be aware of that. Trading futures is a little different than trading stocks. The stock, you can finally give up and say, okay, well, I've lost it all. I'll just hang on the stock, and hopefully one day it comes back, and do nothing with it. And one day it might come back, and sometimes it does. But you can't do that with futures. So just make sure you understand that. And I know some of you are probably listening and saying, why is he explaining something that rudimentary? But you'd be surprised. People are trading that don't understand that. And people just have unrealistic expectations. They don't quite understand futures. They're probably the better trading instrument versus stocks. for a lot of different reasons, which I won't go into because we're 30 minutes here, but just, you can read up on it. The tax breaks, you're taxed better in futures in the U.S. You can go short or long with no problems. You don't have the $25,000 minimum day trader. Um, you don't have the day trader rules where the pattern day trader rules that you have is with stocks. There's just a lot of advantages of trading futures, but there are some disadvantages. But that's one reason we day trade it, because it's safer to day trade it than it is to trade it, swing trade it, and trade it carry trades through the closes. Nowadays, since it's all electronic, you don't have to worry about the closes except over the weekend. But I don't recommend taking trades in futures and carry them over the weekend unless you got deep pockets and you can because you can go to bed up many thousands of dollars and wake up on Monday morning down so far that they close your account instantly and you owe them a lot of money. So if you're not aware of all that, if you're one of those traders that's just not quite aware of what you're doing, read up on it for your own health and safety and peace of mind, so you sleep well at night and you know what you're doing, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next